Welcome back. So if you've been following crypto over the last couple of years, Worldcoin is probably one of the companies you've heard the most about. It was co-founded by Sam Altman, who's one of the founders of OpenAI, which makes ChatGPT and GPT-4, and obviously is a big deal just because it's related to Sam. But it also has really big ideas about not just creating a currency, but for helping identify all the humans in the world and universal basic income and all this big sort of heady futurist stuff. Even if you don't know about Worldcoin, I bet you've heard about the orb, which is the big metal ball that Worldcoin wants to use to scan your irises to verify you're human. This all sounds insane, even as I'm saying it out loud, and I feel obligated here to give you 1,000 disclaimers about the risks of investing in crypto and the huge environmental implications of the blockchain and the many, 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 many scams that have come through this space. And actually, you know what? Let's just get started and we can get to all of that. Alex Heath recently became our foremost Worldcoin expert. He's here now. Let's talk about it. Hi, Alex.
Hey, David.
We're going to talk about Worldcoin because you just had a very interesting experience with Worldcoin. How would you put Worldcoin as a thing in kind of the broader crypto landscape? It's not Bitcoin in the sense that it's just a thing that people buy and sell to make money, but it's not Bitcoin. Like, how do you think about Worldcoin in that space?
Yeah, I would say to understand Worldcoin, you have to really understand Sam Altman.
Okay.
So he's the CEO of OpenAI, which makes ChatGPT, obviously. And his stated goal with OpenAI is to build artificial general intelligence, AGI. And the thinking here is that AGI will eventually happen. And when it does, machines will be smarter, more capable than humans. AIs, for example, are already starting to evade CAPTCHAs, but the thinking that is eventually they're going to run the world for us or maybe over us is the dystopian view of that. And so in that future theoretical world run by AGI, you know, to borrow from Westworld, you kind of need to know who is a human and who is a host. And so I would actually describe Worldcoin, and we can talk about the crypto aspect of it, but in totality, Worldcoin is in a way an antidote to what Sam Altman is building with his other company, OpenAI. And he's not running Worldcoin day to day, but he's the co-founder, kind of public face of it. He's been tweeting about the lines people are forming to get their eyes scanned and kind of using his clout to advance the project. So, you know, Altman is a huge fan of this idea of universal basic income. I've heard him talk about this in interviews. He uses this example of, you know, eventually we have these AGI controlled robots and they're doing solar power farming on our behalfs in mines. They're running things for us. Basically, humans won't need to work as much. They'll make our homes for us. They'll do everything for us. And so in a future world like that, maybe you do want some kind of universal basic income. The problem with that, obviously, is governments may not like that. UBI has never worked to date at scale in the modern world. It's actually funny, you know, researching this, I found out that UBI actually dates back to the Romans and Julius Caesar. So it was something that happened a long time ago. So yeah, the goal really simply is to scan every eyeball on Earth so that you can then distribute Worldcoin, the token, and eventually down the road in some kind of theoretical future, that token will be used for some kind of universal basic income. Now, this sounds like the kind of pitch that I can totally imagine some venture capitalists falling in love with as they're walking through the Presidio in San Francisco. But, you know, the criticism is that it's a solution in search of a problem. But that's at a nutshell kind of the philosophy behind Worldcoin and what Altman is doing.
Yeah, to me, this just strikes me as like a series of solutions in search of a problem. And I think to some extent, I actually don't want to like litigate Worldcoin because it's sort of in this crazy world that if everything were different, this might be useful and necessary. And that's all fine and good. I do think the question of how currency and the identification thing fit together is really interesting because the pushback on this has been basically a lot of people are being asked to give their iris scans to this company, and in exchange, they're getting some amount of this currency. And then it's like, fast forward a bunch of years, this becomes a very important currency, could be super interesting. Who knows? We'll save that for another day. The thing on the ground is that there are a lot of people who are like, there's this sort of meaningless, not staked to anything money that is just being passed around, and in exchange you're taking a huge amount of my data in order to verify that I'm a person because of the other tools that you've made, which are getting so good so fast that you're now solving the problem you've created with a new creation that creates its own problems. And I get like twisted into knots trying to figure out even like which part of this to sort of be annoyed by.
Yeah, there is a lot to be potentially annoyed by, a lot to be skeptical of. I think the people at Worldcoin and the parent company, which is called Tools for Humanity, of course, have high-minded intentions here. I guess maybe it's helpful to rewind just a little bit. Up until last week, Worldcoin was not out in the world. It wasn't a token that you could access at all. And what Worldcoin had been doing for the last couple of years is going around mostly in poorer countries outside of the US and Europe, though they did quite a bit of this in Europe as well, but particularly in Africa, parts of India, they would go out and send contractors to basically convince people in villages, people who maybe just got a smartphone for the first time, to have their eyes scanned in exchange for, some tether or some Bitcoin or a nominal amount of money. And they claim that over 2 million people have already scanned with the orb. And now with the token out, importantly, it's not available in the US for reasons we can talk about, or in China. Yeah. So the whole world aspect of that is kind of defeated on day one. But now that the token is out, basically all those people had IOUs in the form of you're going to get the token at some point, and now it's out. And to the idea of it being a currency, it's actually a horrible currency because it behaves like a security. And that's, I think, why it's not available in the US is the SEC and regulators here in the US have started cracking down on crypto quite a bit. We've seen a lot of lawsuits, stuff going on with Coinbase that's still ongoing. And there's this whole debate about, should these tokens be regulated like securities, which come with important disclosures that right now the crypto economy does not have. If you're thinking about this as a currency, it can't be used for anything right now. So it just exists in the World app when you get it airdropped if you're not in the US. So it's not really good currency in that respect, though they plan to eventually let people send it back and forth. It also fluctuates like crazy, the price of it, because it behaves like a speculative asset. So immediately this became one of the 10 most valuable crypto tokens in the world the week it launched. The app, the World app, was the number one downloaded app on iOS and Android in Kenya, where a lot of people had already been doing signups pre-launch. There's just a lot of pain that's going to happen here with normal people who are doing this because they want some kind of magic bean, and then they realize the price of that bean is not going to be what it was when they signed up. And we've seen this time and time again with crypto projects. And I think that's been the harshest criticism I've seen of the way that they're structuring the actual token so far. And I think that's fair. I mean, I think if you're trying to build a utility, if you're trying to build something that everyone in the world is theoretically going to have one day, I don't really understand the way they've rolled it out initially.
Yeah, that's fair. And I think one of the things I've wondered about this project the whole time has been to what extent Worldcoin would be as kind of interesting and big as it is if Sam Altman weren't involved. Because obviously, in the world of AGI, there are very few people who have done more and put their money where their mouth is more often than Sam Altman. Like, guy has a history of being right. And some of the stuff we're talking about, I think, is sort of specific to Worldcoin, right? Like the underlying tech, the iris scanning stuff, all of which we're about to get into, that is different. But some of these like big long-term promises that they're making about, banking the unbanked and helping create one single global financial system, like that's what everybody in the crypto industry has been saying for a long time. And I think you've been obviously following this and Sam for a while. Like, is a lot of the hype here just that Sam is kind of the Midas of this industry and everything he touches seems to work and people want to be along for the ride?
Yeah, absolutely. He's been going around the world on behalf of OpenAI over the past several months, meeting with regulators, holding talks in different countries. And he's been mentioning Worldcoin. He's been helping to hype it. I saw him tweet a photo now of him in Europe finally getting scanned himself a month or two ago. So yeah, the halo of Altman around this is certainly helping. This is also like a company that's raised a lot of money. Like, we should note they've raised hundreds of millions of dollars from Andreessen Horowitz. I should note one of their earliest investors was actually Sam Bankman-Fried, believe it or not.
Oh boy.
Which, obviously that's a problem, but they've moved on from that. And yeah, they have a lot of money, and it's not a nonprofit either. So,
Right.
there is a business here somewhere. Investors in the project have told me that the kind of initial business plan is to create a kind of API business, is for other companies to be able to access the world IDs so that they can verify that someone is who they say they are theoretically. So like Okta, for example, I think just in Germany, has already rolled out World ID as a way that you can authenticate. So yeah, I guess like right now, yes, the project is technically only like 2 weeks old at this point, but World ID and Worldcoin can't really be used for much of anything except hoping that Worldcoin's price continues to go up.
Right. And that's where it becomes like Bitcoin. So, okay, there are a million disclaimers and a million questions. And generally, I think most crypto stuff is nonsense. And to all of that, we will just leave aside for now. Because I think, if nothing else, this is a show about weird technology and how it makes us feel. And you just experienced this thing. You have seen the orb. This thing's been out for a while. Like you said, it's been kind of out in the world, but it hasn't sort of officially been launched. And now it is officially launched and you got to try it. So tell me about it. Like, what happened? How did this happen? Are you okay? Do you need me to call someone?
I'm okay so far. We'll see if there's any drones around my house afterwards here. Yeah, so I guess it was the day after the token launch. I'd been following Worldcoin kind of leading up to this, but not super in depth, but I was kind of reading up on it. And then I saw that they weren't making the token available in the US, but they were still doing orb scans in a handful of cities. And I just went online to their website. It was like booking through Calendly or something. Like I looked for like 2 hours out on the very same day, and there were a ton of appointments at multiple locations in LA. So I booked one for about an hour out. I got in my car, drove across town to West Hollywood here in Los Angeles to this nondescript co-working space to get my eyeball scanned by Sam Altman's orb.
Yeah. Before we get started, do you have any questions about the project or the orb or anything?
No, I was reading that like your biometrics don't leave the device, right?
So that is correct. However, when you accept the terms of service, there'll be a third optional thing where you can keep your iris image stored in their databases on the cloud.
Okay.
You don't have to.
Okay.
And the only benefit of it is if they do an update that requires you to that changes their algorithm for hashing your iris image, your iris code, you'd have to rescan.
Oh, okay.
So it's a convenience thing. If you don't want it stored, then yes, it will be used on the orb to hash, and they will delete your image.
It was kind of funny because it's a co-working space, right? So there's a bunch of like people there kind of working around different desks, just kind of like plugging away like normal. And then in the very center, you've just got this like, frankly, kind of weird dystopian looking shiny metallic orb. It looks like HAL 9000 from Space Odyssey, just sitting there. It's about a foot tall with a guy behind it who's the orb operator, so to speak. So okay.
Now's the time.
Okay.
This is your moment.
All right.
So yeah, now it should be verifying you on the cloud. Make sure that you didn't try to sign up twice and trick us.
Okay.
And then you get a sticker, and you get a badge, and then you're done.
Okay. I guess the weirdest part of all of this is that my orb operator didn't ask who I was, didn't ask me to confirm my appointment time or even my email or anything like that. He never knew my name. He just walked me through the process, and I was scanned and gone within 5 minutes.
Wait, what?
I know, yeah, that's the reaction. Is like, what? But that's kind of the point. The point of this technology is that Worldcoin and other companies that use their API one day don't need to actually know who you are. They just need to know that you're a human being. And so through a kind of complicated process, I won't go super in depth on here. Basically what happens is the orb scans your eye, makes some little noises, and then it creates this hash of numbers tied to your iris scan that theoretically is not supposed to leave the orb, but helps them assign you a world ID. And then there's a corresponding code that's then eventually put on this Ethereum-based blockchain that corresponds to your iris hash. But because of fancy cryptography technology, there's no way of linking the two. Basically, it's like just having a code saying, I am real according to the orb. My operator for the orb was, of course, a guy who said he works in Web3, but he wasn't a Worldcoin employee. They're using contractors and paying them per scan to do this. So he tried to answer some of my questions, but couldn't really answer all of them. Do you work at Worldcoin?
I am a community specialist.
Oh, okay.
I don't work full-time. I work in Web3 full-time, but this is just my fun little...
Oh, cool. I saw the token launch. Are people coming in mainly to get the token? Or?
So in the US, you don't get tokens.
Oh yeah, so you won't get tokens. So it's basically just to have your ID.
It's just to have your ID. I guess maybe they think if they're they do early engagement, maybe in the future there might be a drop, but nothing official has been announced like that. So.
Oh wow.
You're making me feel a lot of feelings I did not expect to feel right now. But I think the thing that I had not fully processed about WorldCoin until you just explained that is that WorldCoin doesn't care who you are. It just cares that you're a person.
That's right.
Which I had not really thought about. I've been thinking about World ID as a sort of blockchain identity system, right? That eventually they'd be we're going to get rid of your physical passport and exchange it for something on the blockchain. And part of me just wants to give that 2 middle fingers. But they're not doing that. They're going one step much higher in the abstraction layer. They're just saying this is a person, and we can now sufficiently convincingly say this is a person. And that's the goal here. That's it.
Yeah, that's literally the only goal. And that now, the fact that you have been verified by an orb is theoretically provable on a blockchain, and other companies can know this and use that identity layer for their services.
Did this whole thing seem legit to you? You're in a co-working space. It's just a contract person. We've read all these stories about the people who are in malls doing iris scanning. This strikes me as the kind of thing that you'd see in a sci-fi movie, and they would be in the top floor of a huge skyscraper, and there would be people in white lab coats doing this. This is so different from that.
Yeah, it's very bottoms up, community organized. Obviously these people are getting paid to do these scans, but they're really just enthusiasts. My operator said he worked in the Web3 space, of course, and that he was just interested in the technology, and that most of the people that he's scanned were coming in kind of just because they thought it was a cool idea. Maybe they saw Sam Altman tweet about it. He did say that a fair number, maybe a quarter, 20% of people were asking, where are my tokens, even though they're not available in the US. There's certainly people are token farming. There's already been reports of people buying world IDs on the dark web so that they can then get the tokens associated with that world ID. So this is by no means a fail-proof system. But yeah, that's what they're doing at a high level. And they're doing it with flair. This orb was designed by Thomas Meyerhofer, who was Johnny Ive's first designer hire at Apple. And, they've hired a lot of, big names across the tech industry. So yeah, it's definitely this kind of weird sci-fi thing meets reality, but definitely did not feel as high stakes as I thought it would when I walked in.
Yeah, it's really interesting. What is your sense of what they're trying to do with the hardware? Because I kind of see it a bunch of ways. On the one hand, you have this thing that they would want to make seem as normal and unscary as possible if they could just point their phone at you and make it seem every day that would be great. On the other hand, they seem to have leaned into this very futuristic idea. It's this big shiny object. Like you said, it looks like HAL 9000. It just looks like a robot. And I can't imagine that was not intentional. What did you make of the actual hardware itself?
Yeah, I mean, it's designed to look like an eye, like you're looking into an eyeball, which is pretty creepy. But it was super fast. It made some cute noises. And over time, I think what's interesting is that Tools for Humanity, the parent company, says they want to open source the design of the orbs and let other people make them and distribute them. So it becomes this kind of decentralized thing on top of the blockchain aspect of this. Sounds pretty problematic because what happens when some kind of vendor installs malware or something into the orb that isn't, to spec, and there's a huge data leakage or something. But for now, it's all designed and operated and maintained by WorldCoin. These are very expensive devices. I think they cost $5,000 plus each to build. But yeah, eventually the goal is that the whole company moves towards this DAO model, a decentralized autonomous organization, where not only are the orbs able to be operated by other people and made by other people, but the WorldCoin itself can be used to vote on how governance works and how the company operates. So they want to move to this foundation model that would also govern the orbs. They haven't done that yet. I think that's another pretty fair criticism of doing this right now, is it's kind of putting the cart before the horse on what a lot of they're trying to do. But I also see the other side. Investors are telling me look, they got to start somewhere. This is a chicken and egg problem. How else are you going to incentivize people to scan their eyes in this frankly kind of creepy thing. So yeah, that's kind of where it stands now.
Okay. And what do you get as a person who has now had your irises scanned? You got a sticker, which is like rad. I love a sticker. And you have an app that I guess like says you're human. Like how has your life changed now that you've had your irises scanned?
Yeah, I've got my unique human sticker, and then I've got in the World app that says I'm verified. I'm anonymous, but I'm verified with an orb. It says when I was verified. And at some point in the future, I guess because I'm in the US, I probably won't get the world coins, but at some point in the future, this ID I may be able to use to log in somewhere, I guess would be the most immediate implication of having it. But for now, it's just this little virtual badge.
That is, I mean, one of the things that is very funny to me about Worldcoin is there's a version of its story that if you play out the future in one direction, it is this like huge society shaping thing, right? Like if you go all the way out into universal basic income and AGI and we end up in this totally different place than we are now, something like Worldcoin could be really interesting and really important. I would say in a much more sort of immediate and plausible worldview, it's just like a fancy login system. Like it's very funny to me that it's integrating with Okta because it's just Okta. Like in a lot of ways, it's like this is a person who would like to log into a website and it just has cooler technology hardware than like my Apple Watch Okta Verify app.
Yeah. Or you could be more cynical and say it's actually just a pump and dump scheme. So 25% of all world coins are held by the company and its investors, and they have not been able to sell any of that yet. They're in a lockup. So a bunch of Worldcoin is going to get dumped, in a year or so, most likely. And, retail again, like has been the case. And so many of these crypto stories will be left holding the bag.
Yeah.
I think what's clear in the short term is the only reason to own Worldcoin is because you think the price will go up. But in the long run, if you buy this UBI thing and you buy AI may one day rule the world, you may want to have it. But it comes back to what I was saying originally, like this is a solution in search of a problem. And I think whatever happens, I guess I find the idea behind Worldcoin to be deeply unsettling because it suggests a future in which humans are indistinguishable from machines. And I know we've had that in sci-fi. I love Westworld as much as the next person. But the idea that, Sam Altman, one of the leaders in this space, is actively building towards this future that he thinks is definitely going to happen is pretty unsettling. And I think, we as a society may be having bigger conversations about this in the coming years.
I think that's right. I think the thing that gives me immediate hope is that this launch happened at a very funny time, which is right around the same time that OpenAI ditched its project for figuring out what text was created by AI because it didn't work. And I just think we're at this funny phase now where like it keeps making me think of, I watch a lot of HGTV and there was this whole run of HGTV shows where it was like regular people learn how to flip houses. And then there was a whole other run of HGTV shows that were regular people tried to flip their houses and screwed them up so badly that they had to call in professionals. And now that's what that show is about. There's just literally a show called like Help I Wrecked My House. And it's just like, that's the phase of AI that I think we're heading into where it was like, okay, AI got out of control. We're going to build tools to fix the AI. Those aren't going to work. So we're gonna bring in people to fix the AI, but then we're gonna use the AI to beat people. And it's just like we're like caught in this loop forever. And it just sort of seems like Sam Altman is going to be the one sitting on every side of it, just like laughing hysterically as he makes billions and billions of dollars.
Yeah.
So to some extent, like, kudos to Sam Altman for getting it like coming and going.
I mean, yeah, there's nothing like building the problem and the antidote and being able to profit off of both, right?
Seriously.
Altman is such an important aspect of this, as we've been saying, the fact that it's not launched in the US as he's really wooing regulators, going to DC, meeting with President Biden about AI stuff recently, for example. A lot of this is wrapped up in him and how he's perceived. And it makes sense to me now a little bit more why he's been this super vocal voice talking to regulators saying we need safety around AI. Guess what? He's got a solution, right? He's got a for-profit solution to the problem. And so, yeah, we've been hearing a lot about ChatGPT in the broader world and society. I do think we'll start hearing more about Worldcoin in the coming months as Altman starts talking about it more and using his platform. So stay tuned. And you're listening to this episode, you're getting kind of the early look at, I think, something that everyone else is going to be talking about.
All right, Alex, appreciate you stopping by as always. And this time, thank you especially for scanning your eyes for journalism. If you do end up needing new eyes, by the way, let us know, because that's like truly excellent Vergecast material. So keep us posted. You can read more about Alex's experience with the orb in Command Line, his excellent newsletter, which you can sign up for at theverge.com/newsletters. All right, one more thing to do, and then we're going to get out of here. Let's answer a question from the Vergecast hotline.